This job, you're really lucky because you really do get to meet some people that are inspiring. Over here in the United Kingdom, the doyen of chat shows for a period at least was Sir Michael Parkinson. He was a man I was so envious of when I was younger because he got to interview the Hollywood greats in their final outing, the likes of Lauren Bacall, Fred Astaire, Oliver Reed, all the big names that you thought, wow, these people have got some stories, Orson Welles, I could go on. And then I was lucky enough to meet and interview Sir Michael myself. So you can imagine that this really was an inspiration meeting. The American equivalent, Larry King. Now for me, Larry was a genius because he was the last man to actually do a sit-down interview with the brilliant Frank Sinatra on screen. And Larry, again, really super guy, married quite a few times, had a lot of stories about simply everybody, but really inspirational as well. And a bit like myself, and I'm not trying to akin myself to Larry, but we basically just took people as we found them. I've never really been impressed by celebrity because I really see celebrity as something that is something, you get lucky with. It doesn't matter who you are. So whether I've sat down with the president, which I have, or indeed a superstar like Mariah Carey, essentially it's just all about breaks, if you want it and how much you want it. But Larry King was fascinating, so I re-looked at our interview to see exactly what he thought about some of the people that we often talk about. Oh, go on, you know who I'm talking about. The former royal known as the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle. And here's what he had to tell me about that. Now, because of restrictions and we don't actually own the film, we can only put really the picture up, but it's interesting listening to it back because what I find fascinating is, he wasn't cruel or anything like that. He was sort of telling me that Meghan Markle was absolutely obsessed with getting on the Larry King show. Now, Larry King, as for many Americans watching, was the big show. He was on CNN for decades until he got booted out and replaced by the British broadcaster Piers Morgan, who sadly also got booted out, but that's showbiz, It wasn't a very friendly falling out either. Larry had to go back, Piers had to go back at him. You get the picture. And what I love about that sort of thing is, as I often say here, that's why I'm a solo actor, might point out, there are no friends in showbiz. Eventually they will turn on you. So what did Larry actually think to Meghan Markle? Well, according to him, her team had been hounding him for a very long time, perhaps over a year. The problem was that the booking people behind Larry King didn't really feel she was a big enough name. After all, she wasn't the major star of that particular cable TV drama suit, so you can understand that. But if they had a desperate slot that they needed to fill, and I don't mean that cruelly, but that's how TV works, suddenly you don't have a guest. Oh, tell you what, let's drag that person in that we're all so keen on. But apparently when Meghan arrived, and as ever we have to say allegedly, she had a list of topics that she wanted to talk about. She simply just didn't want to be an actress talking about her latest role or plug in a TV series. She wanted to be seen as an activist, a sort of entrepreneurial, powerhouse woman. This, apparently, according to Larry, kind of flabbergasted her because it wasn't the sort of message that was being put out by her agents at the time. Now, it wasn't the first time that Meghan appeared on Larry King because she popped back with her co-star, Patrick J. Adams, who was in Suits, obviously. And again, the narrative was, well, we want to present Meghan in this light. And it was interesting because, when I sat down and remember this was just kind of like after the royal wedding, and then we met again about a year later, his sort of opinion dramatically changed, and he said that he'd never met anybody so ambitious and so forceful. And remember, this is a man who sat down with icons of the silver screen, people like Robert Mitchum, as I say, Lauren Bacall, all the big names, Frank Sinatra. So to basically cite that was something, I definitely thought. And what was also interesting, he said that when the interview came out, the team then fed back some sort of thoughts about what they wanted to keep in and what they didn't want to keep in. But as Larry King pointed out, it was his show and it was his final editorial decision. He didn't give that to anyone. So as you can see, there was a pattern, wasn't there? That there was obviously a directive that that particular individual, the former royal known as Meghan, wanted to go under. And even though she'd been given an amazing break on a big show, and the second time was, of course, when he departed CNN. So when you think about it again, you would have thought she would have been grateful. At this point, she's still really not a star at any level. Seemingly not. I bring this up simply because, when you look at some of the things that have been coming out recently in the media, you can't think, really? Is that true? When you look back at some of your own associations, you find not only true, but spot on. Larry King, of course, was an incredible broadcaster who had a wonderful career, very down-to-earth guy, and he put his long life down to, let me tell you, strawberries and soya milk. I know this because that was the first thing he handed to me when he arrived at my studio and said, "Can you look after this?" I didn't really think he understood that I would be the one interviewing him. Great fun nonetheless, and we became very good friends. To summarise, was Larry a fan of Meghan? Well, as you know, he'd been married quite a few times, and he said she was incredibly beautiful in the flesh, very sort of, how will I phrase this? He said basically she was a flirt, you know, she knew exactly what she was selling and what she had to sell. And she also sent him a beautiful bottle of brandy and some flowers as a thank you, so she had her manners nonetheless. But as he pointed out, you know, lots of stars do this because they know they want to come back on the show. There's my thoughts on Larry, Meghan and me. Hope you enjoyed them. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.